right, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace be upon you all, and welcome to the Women's Mosque of America's first co-ed discussion circle for our Quran Literacy Program. My name is Hasna, and I serve as founder and president of the Women's Mosque of America. And I'm also the creator of our Quran Literacy Program. And we were really looking forward to having our live in-person dinner. But, we make plans, God laughs. And so we are here tonight online. If anyone was here actually for our very first launch for the Women's Mosque of America, could you raise your hand on that feature? Okay, we got a few people. Okay, so do you guys remember we were in the middle of a 3-year drought in California, and the day that we had our very first Jummah of the Women's Mosque of America, not only did it rain and pour in LA, but it poured so hard over our building that the building was shaking. So sorry, California, but we're doing it again. We brought another storm your way. For those who aren't familiar, water and rain especially is a sign of mercy in Islam. So this is, hopefully everyone's safe at home. But from yesterday and before, there have been signs all over the freeways, do not travel Sunday through Tuesday. So the fact that it's coinciding with our launch of our next program is exciting for me, but again, I hope everyone stays safe. So, inshallah. All right. So, for those who are new, I will repeat our ground rules and policies that we have been repeating at the Women's Mosque of America for 9 years now. At the Women's Mosque of America, we celebrate and respect the differences of opinion within our vast religion, and we believe that our community's diversity is a beautiful sign of mercy from God. We are an inclusive middle ground space that welcomes all Muslims from every sect, background, school of thought, and level of religious practice. We also invite our interfaith family from all religious backgrounds to join us as observers, participators, and supporters. We have a come as you are dress code policy, yes, even online, and that means that everyone is always welcome to come dressed as they normally do outside of our mosque. So again, for those of you who are just joining, I didn't unfortunately get the chance to prepare too much today. We had a few family medical emergencies, but inshallah, we'll take today as part of the experiment. Part of what we want to do this first year of our program is really get as much feedback from you guys as possible, so that we can continue to shape the program. And by the end of this year, we'll have like a really great finalized product that we can advertise on a much bigger scale. So please keep all the feedback coming. On Slack, we have a testimonials channel. You can always tell us, how things are going. Or sorry, not testimonials. We have that too, but we have a focus group channel on Slack. I think it's focus group feedback. So if there's anything wrong going on, I actually like to hear what's going wrong more than I like to hear what's going right, because the areas where people are struggling, where you might think that it's just you that's struggling, you actually might be the key to helping a whole bunch of other people, and facilitating making this program easier for them to access the Quran. So please do not be shy. Share, you're not being negative or critical. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I really want to hear what's working, what's not working, especially because those are the kind of bugs I want to fix this first year, inshallah. We want to hear from everyone today. Again, we're doing sort of a loose structure for our very first discussion circle because it's our first month of reading. And if you feel shy, please do push yourself today to speak up, really practice using your voice. All of these years we've had our Women's Mosque discussion circles with all of the sisters as a safe space for women to push themselves. But now that we are elevating to this next level, this is another area where we want you guys to push yourselves even further. And we also want the men to push themselves to speak up too, because from the very beginning, it's never been about, oh, women, need empowerment and men don't. It doesn't matter who you are, for some of us, based on our cultural backgrounds or childhoods or whatever, there might be a man who has never spoken up ever before, and he's someone who needs to grow in that regard. And there might be a woman who has always spoken up, and she actually needs to make some room for others, right? So it has nothing to do with gender, although of course sometimes there are patterns, societal patterns, family, cultural patterns. But the truth of the matter is, we want to hear from everybody. So if you are speaking up, a lot, maybe listen to see if someone else has already shared what you were about to say. If someone has, then let's make room for another perspective. And also, if you are someone who usually doesn't speak up and doesn't share, we really want to hear from you, because the essence of this program is that we want everybody to fill in those voids of space that right now are being filled in by, um, you know, certain leaders and people who are taking advantage of the void of space. And I think sometimes what happens is, um, people think that they have to say something interesting or new because that's what gets shared and is sensational. But that's not what we need. What we need to hear is the truth. So as long as what you're saying is true, it doesn't have to be interesting, it doesn't have to be sensational, it doesn't have to be new, it just has to be true. And it has to come from your heart, from a place of humility. Then we want to hear from you, and you have something valuable to share. Even if you don't think it's valuable, it is valuable. You never know. Um, so during this discussion, we do have a no announcements or endorsements policy, right? I am, as the creator of this program, I'm going out of my way to always differentiate when I'm sharing my personal opinion. So I will say, like, I believe this, or I think this is my perspective. I also expect all of you to do the same. I'm not creating this circle, and this sort of space for a few people to come in and take advantage of that. No, I'm creating this space for everybody to share equally and speak up. So please don't take advantage of this platform, thinking like, oh, Hassan is not, kind of taking things by the helm. I'm not doing that out of passivity or out of weakness. It's by design, because I want to share this platform equally with everyone. So obviously nobody here is going to do that, but I do want you to know that this is by design. I want to hear equally from everyone. Also, just know again, that it doesn't matter what your background is, what your so-called level of expertise is, everyone has something to share. Um, all right, so before we get started, I do want to say and just remind everybody that this program is not just about reading the Quran or learning about Islam. It's also about just expanding our relationship with God on an individual and a community level, right? So many times right now, like when we think about think about the Quran and the framework that we use to approach the Quran, it's through a linguistic lens only. And that is important for sure, to know like root words, Arabic, all of these things. But there's so many more lenses to use in order to appreciate the Quran. So I've listed out just a few of them, but I'm listing these to see if any of these resonate with you personally, and so that you will understand what you're bringing to the table. So there's also the historical context of the Quran, right? There's also the experiential experience of living the Quran, and I've put that into the apply it sections in our curriculum. They're also the lens of scientific miracles. So I remember when I was little, I got my hands on I think it's called the Bible, the Quran, and Science, by Maurice Bucaille. And so that's talking about like the Big Bang, the two different bodies of water that Jacques Cousteau discovered, and then he saw it was a verse in the Quran. There are all of these amazing scientific miracles that are talked about in the Quran. There's also the psychological or emotional lens, looking at the way that the verses affect us on a psychological level. There's also the family systems lens. So if you look at the family systems, each of the family systems that are mentioned in the Quran, such as Prophet Jacob's family, Pharaoh's family, Prophet Noah's family, they're all these different lenses towards family structures and what to do in different scenarios. There are also stories. So we all know about Rumi, the famous Muslim scholar turned poet. We're not going to erase his Muslimness, but he actually had a female teacher growing up, and she was like a nurse, and she would relate all of the stories of the Quran to him in kind of like a childlike, fun way. So that's kind of the groundwork that people don't talk about when we talk about Rumi. There's also the lens of nature. Green Dean is a book that you guys can look up, and it talks about um, all of the verses in the Quran that have to do with nature and the environment. There's female leadership, looking at all the du'as. There's so many helpful du'as in the Quran. There are recipes for healing. There is the interfaith aspect. There's also political commentary and political advisement, right? So I'm listing all of these. This is a tiny, tiny list, but I'm listing all of these because I want all of you guys to really value your individual perspectives and what you are bringing to the table, especially if you don't usually hear people talking about the Quran through your lens and your framework. That means it's even more valuable for you to share and more important for you to share. All right. So with that, let's all share from the heart. Let's be authentic. We're not sharing to show or to teach anybody else. We're just sharing to share. And I would love to open it up. First, let's just hear any feedback at all. I kind of want to just get an idea of where people are, what's been working, maybe not working for you so far. And it would be great to hear your guys' names, maybe where you're joining from, because I know we have people joining from all over the US and some from abroad. So I will just take this one by one. So I see one person, Aisha, is it Belables? I'm gonna unmute you.
It's Bella Best.
Bella Best. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Speaking of the family systems,
Mhm.
a friend of mine has a really cool family tree from Prophet Adam, may Allah have peace on him, to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Has like this family tree all the way down with all the different prophets. It's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah. And are you joining us as a Quran literacy participant? So we did today, because we had to cancel our in-person event, we did open it up to the public. So have you been part of the program so far?
I did sign up as the Quran participant through Eventbrite.
Okay.
I I tried to attend the orientation, but it didn't. I had an issue with the link, or like I don't know,
Okay.
it didn't load for me. Yeah.
No problem. So Lubaba is here. She's our online support person. She's on it. So Lubaba, if you can help her out, inshallah, we'd love to get you started. Okay, I see another person. I'm gonna ask to unmute Rashda Khan. Go ahead.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Rashda. I'm logging in from Cincinnati, Ohio, but I actually am originally from Garden Grove, California. And I think Hasna and I went to the same Sunday school, maybe. I grew up going to Orange County, and Dr. Sticky was my Sunday school teacher. So, but I've been in Ohio now for about 10 years, and I was really excited to join the program. I'm one of your formal participants. I have to say, I really am enjoying the richness of this particular translation by Muhammad Asad. And I do have to confess that when I spend time on the footnotes, sometimes I lose track of the original thought, because there's more in the footnote than there is in the actual text. And so sometimes I disconnect because there's so much there, but I'm appreciating the richness, the background, the comparisons, the different opinions, the methodical approach and information in the footnotes. So I'm pleasantly surprised and enjoying, surprised by the vastness of information in the footnotes and enjoying the experience. So
Wonderful. Wonderful. On that note, I actually want to take a little poll from everyone. So, if this is your very first time reading the Quran at all, any translation, can you raise your hand, the raise hand feature on Zoom? Does everyone know how to do that?
From front to back.
Yeah, let's say that from front to back. If this is your very first time reading the entire Quran, any translation, go ahead and raise your hand with the Zoom feature. I'm just curious to see how many people this is your first time. Yeah, and then if you can't figure out the feature, you can just raise your hand like that. Wow, lots of people. Awesome. And then keep your hand raised. And then if this is your very first time reading Muhammad Asad's translation specifically, so maybe you've read a translation before, but you've never read Muhammad Asad's translation with the footnotes, go ahead and keep your hand raised or raise your hand as well. All right, cool. Very cool. Yeah, I would love to know too, like, is there anything or what has surprised you so far? I know we're only about a month and a half in, but as you guys share kind of in this first section, we're just doing general sharing. If you can share also if there's anything within the Quran reading so far that has surprised you or maybe broken any expectations or assumptions from what you thought would be in the Quran. Would anyone like to answer that question? And I know I just asked everybody to share their hands, so I'm not sure. Maybe use your actual hand if you'd like to answer that question. Anyone? Okay, Rashta, go ahead.
So I read the foreword and the prologue,
Oh,
and well, yes, it helps me to put things in context.
Mhm.
And there was a quote in it was the which one was written by him? I suppose that must have been I don't know, whichever one that the author who translated the book, he also wrote a section. So he made reference to this line that I'd never heard before. I was really impressed with it. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to paraphrase it. But he said that God said that I've given you this diversity of opinions as a gift.
Yes.
And I read that over and over and over because it went against everything I heard growing up, that, oh, part of the problem with Muslims is we don't all unify on our way of thinking and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, no, this means you can think something, I can think something, as long as there's a basis for it and it's grounded. Your opinion has value, my opinion has value. Having different opinions is a sign of intelligence and a sign of thinking. And if this book is for people who think and reflect, then it's a gift. I mean, I've never seen it written that way, that it's a gift, that we can come to different conclusions and there's value in that and beauty in that. I was really surprised to read that.
Wow, beautiful. I'm let me see if I can actually share. I'm pulling up his translation, just the PDF. So let me do that. And then maybe we can scroll through together.
Yeah, I can find it. Let me real quick.
So you said either the prologue or the foreword. So we did say we don't endorse the foreword because I think it was written by one of his fans, like after his death, and is a little bit. Oh, maybe it was the prologue then.
Yeah. I'm looking through too. I'm looking for it.
Okay, go ahead and it looks like Lubaba said her power went out at home. She can't get back online. So I'm gonna go ahead and
so I've got it, Hasna.
Okay, great.
It's in the foreword and I can read the sentence if that's okay with you.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. And they were fully aware too of the prophet's profound saying, quote, so it's from the prophet, I misquoted, the differences of opinion among the learned men of my community are an outcome of divine grace, which clearly implies that such differences of opinion are the basis of all progress in human thinking, and therefore a most potent factor in man's acquisition of knowledge.
Beautiful.
And
What
that's
page is that on?
Sorry, page XIII in the forward.
In the forward.
Yeah.
It's not beyond this online version. That's okay. Yeah, it's true. And it's something that we've unfortunately lost due to myriad reasons, but it doesn't have to be lost forever. So it's really exciting that all of you are here to revive that spirit again, inshallah. Okay, I'm gonna call on Kristen.
Oh, Assalamu alaikum. This was, I should have written down the ayah, but it was in one of the more recent readings where it said something about the people who do good deeds are going to be rewarded. But then before that, it said something about the Christians say we're going to heaven, the Jews say no, we're going to heaven. But the verse I was reading seemed to kind of
Uh-oh, you're cutting out.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. So you were saying you were talking about the verse that talks about the people of the book saying that only they're going to go to heaven, and then
yeah. Oh, can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I think it's with the weather here. I apologize.
Yeah, LA is going crazy tonight.
Yeah. I'm up in North Cal, but we're having similar storms and all that. Yeah. Well, I guess overall I was just surprised by not surprised, but I felt really good about the clarity and the voice in the Quran, and how I should have written it down because now I'm maybe a little nervous, okay. But it seems to indicate that it's people who are doing. So sometimes I had questions. Okay, is it possible? Are my Christian relatives going to have the chance of going to heaven? And this particular verse I read seemed to be pretty clear that yes, although I'm a little confused, but that's the clarity, which it seems like yes, they do have a chance if they're doing deeds and all these other things. But also there was a verse last one, we should be people of the middle way. Which I think your organization.
Sorry, it is.
Can you hear me?
Still cutting out a little bit. Why don't you just talk super slow, and then we'll be able to make out what you're saying even as it cuts out. You can help us out that way. Oh, it's completely cut out now. But yeah, you're completely right, and that is a beautiful point that you make, that sometimes there's all this confusion about like is it just Muslims, but the Quran is very clear. God is very clear in the Quran that it's about doing good works and good deeds. And if you want to, sister, if you want to find that verse while we go on to other people, we'll let you back on to cite it. That'd be great to hear from you. Okay, anyone who hasn't spoken yet? You want to share something maybe that has surprised you about what you've read so far? Anything at all? Howie.
Assalamu alaikum. My first time reading the Quran was last year, and I read the Clear Qur'an, which is pretty popular. But reading it again in this translation, I had a great time with the first version. It led me to embrace Islam. But reading this version, I realized how there's so much depth and nuance in the word choice and the language, and it's just a very rich experience that I've really been enjoying.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've heard a lot about the Clear Qur'an. I haven't actually read it myself yet, but when I've heard about it, I'm always like, oh no, but if you don't see the footnotes or you don't see any commentary there, you're kind of missing out. But it's great that at least it's bringing some people closer to experiencing the words of God. So
yeah, there are footnotes. I would say
Okay.
its goal is to be clear and not to get you to know everything about the Quran. So it's a very simple version, and it does that purpose. But now, as I want to learn more about the Quran, like this is a perfect translation.
Okay, wonderful. So it's like a good stepping stone.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's good to know. Okay, we'll do Susan and then Carmen. So Susan, you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Hasna. It's good to see you, and I'm delighted to be here. So I have read bits and pieces of a different Quran that I had gotten years back, and I think, I converted just for numerous reasons, but that translation always felt very harsh, and there was no context. And I think the part that's really just, I have loved reading so far, because there's a almost celestial quality and a depth of spirituality to it that has really resonated with me in a way that I haven't experienced before. And even just, many of the surahs that we've read and the pieces that I've read so far, it's explaining even current world events to me in ways that I hadn't really anticipated. And so I'm just absolutely delighted to be reading this, and just, I almost feel like falling in, like I'm in love, like it's just the greatest. So it's really just stirred something within me. And so, yeah, so thank you. I just wanted to share that. It's really special.
Wonderful. That makes me so happy to hear. And I was just, if I can share, Susan, I won't put you too much on the spotlight, but I was just texting Susan today and I was like, oh, it made me so happy to see you signed up because you're so busy. And my biggest fear with starting this program was like, oh no, is it leaving out people who are so super busy? And so it made me really happy to see that you're not left out, that you're joining, and you're able to experience. So thank you, Susan, for being a part.
Very much so. I may not be keeping quite to the timeline, but I'm keeping to a timeline,
good.
and it's making a big difference, and I love it. So thank you, Hasna.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Okay, Carmen and then Myra.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am in Oakland, California, and I first got introduced to this translation of the Quran by listening to these YouTube videos, highlights from the Quran by Dr. Maher Hatut, and I had read several different translations of the Quran before that, before I started listening to those recordings, and so I was very intrigued to, it was like literally next on my list to read the translation by Muhammad Asad.
Oh, wow.
And then I saw, I followed the Women's Mosque online, and saw that when you were starting this program and you were going to use this translation, I was just overjoyed. So I have really been enjoying the daily assignments, and I feel like the amount is just right for my life at present. And I related to something someone said earlier about kind of getting lost in not getting lost, but like, really getting into the footnotes, and then like going back to the text of the Quran. And so one thing I've started doing is I read through the assignment first, and then I go back and I read then I read it again, like more slowly, with, interrupting to go to the footnotes.
Okay.
And I think what I'm going to start doing, I realize this takes, more time, but because the assignments are relatively short, I feel like I can do it. I'll probably go back a third time after I've read the footnotes with that kind of more disjointed way of reading it, and I'm going to read it again, just the text. And so I'm going to see how that goes. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I love I wish right now that my intention is to participate more in the other pieces that you've provided, like the reflection and the Reddit discussions. And I haven't quite been able to do that yet, but yeah, really appreciating this program.
Wonderful. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, and I want to reiterate, like, no pressure on the other parts. That's literally there because It's the first year. And so a lot of it is experimentation to see what do people need, because it took me a while to realize this, but I'm a little bit weird in that I'm very, very solid. I have a very solitary life. And so, I read the Quran as a teenager. I was reading it just on my own, and like, actually, I remember when I first like really got into reading it in English, and I saw the verse of light. My interpretation was, oh my God, God's talking about electricity in the Quran. And I tried to show it to my 15-year-old friend, and my best friend at the time, and she was like, oh, cool. So from then on, I was just me and God. I had nobody to talk about the Quran with. So I'm so grateful to have all of you to learn your perspectives and see the appreciation. But because of that, in starting this program, I wanted to have as many different avenues for people based on different personality types, based on, people's needs for community. So don't think of it as like, an assignment that you have to do and that you're falling short of. It's more of like, if you're someone who you can't just read a book on your own, for a 1,000-page book on your own for an entire year, if you need community support, then hey, you can join, Reddit and get that support. If you just want to chat and, writing and reading is too much for you and you're more of an extrovert, you like to just talk and process your thoughts by talking, then you can hop onto Clubhouse and talk out your thoughts. So think of it more that way. And even like the different supplementary activities that I've put in there, I'm trying to target different ways of appreciating the Quran. So, apply it if that's what excites you. Reflect if maybe you don't have time, but you just want to think about things in a more reflective way through your day or journal. I'm trying to do it more like that to make sure there's something for everyone. So don't feel pressure. Once again, it's not an obligation. I do ask though that you just read through it so that if anything does jump out to you, then throughout the day you can just reflect in your mind on it. But it's absolutely not required, and I don't want people to put pressure on themselves about it. Okay, Mayra. And I would love to hear from any male participants next after Myra goes. This is a co-ed program, and it's important to me that we have dialogue going. So if there are any men who'd like to speak after Myra, I'd love to listen to you guys as well. Okay, go ahead, Myra.
Assalamu alaikum. This is I had started reading this translation a while ago, but it sometimes feels time consuming trying to like get all the footnotes. So I agree with some people that sometimes flipping back and forth because he'll reference a footnote like further along the Quran. There's like, oh wait, like now I need to know what that says and like read that passage and then read that footnote that he was addressing. But and I'm sure there are other people here that Arabic isn't their native language. So when sometimes he'll make things wordy, and so it's kind of like, well, what are you trying to say there? But it's also like I understand the intention behind it, that it's like, it could mean several different things, and we're looking at the context of the whole verse, not just like a direct translation, and I'm like flipping through pages where I had put like other sticky notes in before, and I'm like adding more sticky notes, and I'm just like, this is gonna end up with so many little flags by the end, inshallah. Yeah, I think as a person that didn't grow up Muslim, I also kind of agree that finding those references where it's like any other person could reach
Salvation.
Like rewards and
Yeah.
blessings, if they do good acts. And it's seeing God everywhere, or seeing the creator everywhere, and seeing, that he is the east and west. And so I'm like, well, a lot of other people can fall under these umbrellas. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't they don't have to be like monotheistic. They don't have to be, follow this or follow that. And it's just humanity and knowing. And I don't know if one of the passages that we had read beforehand already talked about this, but just being created as diverse people because we all have something to contribute to the world. So it's like recognizing that outside of our community, whatever community you would identify as, there is something of value in other people's experience. And we were created in that way so that we can all learn from each other as well.
Yes.
So that's what I appreciate from this translation / interpretation of the Quran.
Yeah, and what you pointed out about sometimes he'll reference other footnotes later on. If that's kind of getting in the way, the way that I designed the curriculum, I wasn't intending for people to go flip through those. And I don't think you're missing out too much if you don't flip through it, because he will kind of explain why he's telling you to go to the other section. There are some times though where he will do that. Like for example, when he references the other verses on the community that broke the Sabbath. And so then I put that into the curriculum questions themselves and said to look at his second reference. So if that is kind of feeling cumbersome to you, it wasn't my intention that people would be looking into all of his secondary references. It's just the readings, the daily readings, and then the footnotes directly below that are required, just to clarify. I saw, is it Fizzle or Faisal? I saw you raising your hand.
Oh yeah, Faisal, assalamu alaikum.
Faisal, assalamu alaikum.
Sorry, my name's spelled wrong. It's
Oh,
fake.
all good.
Faisal or Faisal. So what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Is there, so just general feedback, and specifically, is there anything that has surprised you so far or broken your expectations about the Quran itself and what God's message in the Quran is?
Oh, just the way Muhammad Asad writes. I mean, to me, he's amazing. He was a journalist and a philosopher, and he was a writer. So I kind of resonate with him because I'm a writer as well, like telling stories. So I just feel the way he tells the stories, and then his footnotes are really really helpful in understanding, like when he talks about thee alone do we worship and thee alone do we turn for aid. And then just the way he talks about mercy and compassion, loving tenderness, more comprehensively about grace. I'm starting to understand it more. I'm just my Arabic's not that great, so when there's Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, I'm I haven't gone and looked both up yet, but I know what Ar-Rahman means, but Ar-Rahim, I totally forgot to go back and look at what that means. So
No problem.
it's really
And
making me think.
those names of God too, we have a link in the curriculum guide where you can see the full list of translations of it. So why don't I actually pull that up and I'll show you guys directly. I know not everyone is taking the program in the same exact way. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, I really like your curriculum guide. Thanks for creating that.
Wonderful. Alhamdulillah. I didn't realize I had so much in me, like bottled up. It's like pouring out of me. And I'm like, it's been an amazing experience. I feel like I'm truly living my purpose, being able to write it all out. So alhamdulillah for that. Islam Awakened. So let me just go 1-1. Okay, so Islam Awakened is a site that aggregates all of the different translations out there. And so in the curriculum guide one day, I asked people to just take a look at the Bismillah verse and all of the different translations, just to get a feel for the diversity of opinion on even just this one phrase. So we see the most gracious dispenser of grace, Muhammad Asad's translation, most compassionate, most merciful. Sometimes you'll hear the most merciful, most compassionate. That tends to be the most, I would say, common translation, or sometimes beneficial and merciful. Merciful to all, mercy giver. Then we see, let's see, beneficent, merciful, mercy giving, merciful, bestower of unlimited mercy and continuously merciful, instant and sustaining source of all mercy and kindness, entirely merciful, especially merciful. I saw someone on Reddit say that they really liked one particular one. They said they liked the kind, the caring. And I thought that was an interesting one too. I hadn't seen before. But yeah, it's a lovely site if you're ever, and they have it also in organized in different categories too. But it's a great comparison tool that I love to check out whenever I want to check something in the Quran. Okay, so I saw Rabia's hand raised for a while. Let me go ahead and call on her. And I also do see a couple. I'm so curious to see any couples or families that are taking this together. It would be really cool to hear from any of you to see if that has if this has kind of been something you've been dialoguing about. So I see a few different pairings. If anyone would like to raise their hand, I invite you guys to speak up as well. Okay, go ahead, Rabia.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm calling from Orange County, California. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate the different levels of this program because I try to do all the reading, but on days where I have a little bit more time, I go through the questions and I'm able to do a little bit more, and I just appreciate being able to do a little bit more on the days I have time. And one thing I wanted to share that I read that really kind of resonated in a deep way with me was in Surah Baqarah. I noted down the verses. It's 67 to 71. When
Here,
Moses
I'll go ahead and share that on the screen while you're talking about it. So let me pull that up on the Muhammad Asad translation. So you said Surah Baqarah 67
to 71.
71. Give me just 1 second. I want to pull that up for everybody.
And it's more the footnotes that really I kind of read it and I was like, it's when Moses is telling his people how God wants them to sacrifice the cow, and they just keep asking, well, this or that, and they keep asking all these questions. And the way that the footnotes explains it, you come away with the idea that sometimes we're given our religious instructions in a simple way to make it easy for us. And we, as humans, we make things complicated ourselves by asking so many questions. But I love that idea about the idea that religious law, sometimes it's intentionally, it's supposed to be simple and straightforward so that we can maybe each interpret it in our own way. God wants to make the religion easy for us to follow. And I love that idea of not getting too much in the weeds and too much in the details, and really what's the idea behind what Allah wants from us.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And, I was listing out all of the, not all, but a few of the many, many possible frameworks that are missing from our discussion of Islam, the Quran, and religion in general. And I really think that, and this is why I love Muhammad Asad's translation. I think the biggest missing piece for me personally as an artist is that right-brained, creative, holistic framework that focuses on the essence of things, the inner truth of things, rather than just the details, sort of left brain analytical framework. And of course, both are equally important. But right now, I do think that we are a bit out of balance. So I appreciate you bringing that up, that, you know, it's not just about the details, and sometimes the details can bring us further away from where we want to be, which is connected. Okay, we got Nadia.
Assalamualaikum. Nadia from Los Angeles. I was going to continue on with that verse 67. That one stood out to me too, because it's put in the Surah Baqarah, which has so many specific things that we should do or not do. And I remember it was always more difficult for me to read Baqarah than the last juz, for example, because it was so heavy. And so then reading that verse about, you know, why are you trying to go in and make things so difficult and so detailed? Then it made me kind of read the whole surah in a different way, almost saying like, you know, yes, there are these things in the surah, but is it me putting something on it that now I'm trying to make it more difficult than it is, more complicated than it is? So.
Wonderful. And it sounds so fun in the background there, Nadia. I think someone's playing a little video game.
I'm missing the babysitting room tonight.
I know you signed up for like 3 kids or 4 kids.
For all the kids.
Aw, sound like a Maureen. So Nadia was one of our recent khatibas, and she was talking about the importance of adoption. Actually, she did 2 khutbas in a row. She was our khatiba when we had people giving bayans, and one of the recent ones was on supporting our indigenous family and Native family, and we had Sister Ashley Wolford give the bayan, and then Sister Nadia gave the khutbah after her, and talked about how she and her husband and family have recently adopted Harun, who we can see now, because before he was officially adopted, they weren't allowed to show his picture. So now we can see him, alhamdulillah. Okay, Sarah.
Salam, everyone. I'm really enjoying this translation as well. And one thing that I like is the perspective of Muhammad Asad, as far as coming from a line of rabbis and then becoming Muslim, becoming an expert on the Quran. Because I like how he's able to talk about both Hebrew and Arabic, and how prophets were described in the Torah versus in the Quran. And so I'm kind of having fun after I read the footnotes, looking up like, how was that referenced in the Torah, or how was that referenced in the New Testament, and then comparing it with how it's presented in the Quran and seeing where it's the same and where it's different. So I'm enjoying that aspect of it a lot, and just generally.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's a really important framework that I think we as Muslims need to keep in mind, that this is a continuation, that we're not just the only ones who have a connection with God, and we're not the only ones that have a book, and that we are I heard someone put it in a great framework once. They were like, it's the final in the trilogy, but it is the final testament. You know, if we have the Old Testament, New Testament, the Quran is the final testament. So it's really great to have his perspective with all of that background knowledge, for sure. Nurja?
So I have a very critical mind naturally, and I approach everything with this. It's almost like, sensitivity readers. I feel like that's how my mind works, where I'm like, okay, well, what's wrong with this? And I found myself once I started with Al-Baqarah, I felt so defensive throughout all of it. Up until now, I still feel myself getting defensive. And I have tried to read the Quran by myself and was not successful because of all of the feelings I had, and I didn't know what to do with them. It's been really helpful to be journaling. I'm really grateful for my buddy Mona. We've had really good conversations on the side, and then I'm loving the Reddit kind of interactions there, because even the piece that you just pulled up, I had interpreted it completely differently until I read the footnotes and then read everyone else's thoughts, and I was like, oh, I see. I saw it more as it could be important to, well, I won't get into that. What I do want to say is
get into it. That's why we're here. Get into it.
Well, I had misinterpreted.
We want to hear.
Okay. Well, the thing that I struggle with, and you mentioned it, I don't know if it was you that mentioned it, but somebody from the women's mosque mentioned, because I saw another person who had written in Reddit saying that, you know, a lot of the ways that Muhammad Asad seems to be interpreting things, it seems very, you know, this is the Jewish people do this and that's why it's wrong, and this is addressing this that they do that's wrong, and it feels very targeted, and the Quran itself isn't necessarily targeted during that whole time. It seems like his footnotes are. And somebody mentioned, you know, that he had converted, and that maybe that's he's just speaking from his personal context. So it was helpful for me to hear that. What I'm really struggling with, I'm just going to be totally honest. You know, I identify as Muslim. I've always identified as Muslim. I think I sometimes wish that I didn't, because I think that my life would be easier in terms of judgments and things like that if I could just, you know, be without all of that. But I love our traditions, and I love the faith that I feel Islam has gifted me with. And I can't separate those two. And so I was really excited about joining this program, because I love the approach that the Women's Mosque has taken. And I was really hopeful that maybe I can read the Quran and really see the message that I'm supposed to be receiving from this. And what I'm struggling with right now is, you know, there's this whole piece that we're reading right now, and we have been reading, that's saying anybody who believes in Allah in any kind of way, anyone who surrenders basically, is, you know, under God's grace. And then it says, don't do it like they did, because they think they're better than everybody else. It's not meant, you're not meant to be better than anybody else. And also, we're the last book, we're the right path, and it feels like it's a combination of this supremacy with this so beautiful, powerful, aligned message that feels aligned for me of anyone who believes, and that's a beautiful thing. How do we feel like we're really the last book, you know? What about the Baha'is who say that they're, you know, how do we know that? And why do we think that God would stop providing us with messages at some point? Like, oh, okay, I've provided all the messages and now you guys are good because I gave you the one. Why can't we keep receiving messages? It almost feels like the Quran is saying that it's continued to bring messages. But then Muslims have said, no, this is the only one. And I can't, trying to grapple with it, and I'm struggling, and I'm grateful for that struggle because it's helping me, and also is a struggle.
Okay, great. So now, because you share that, no, Nurjahan, now the discussion has begun tonight. All right. So thank you for sharing that, because now we can open it up. Does anyone want to respond to what she just said? Does anyone have a perspective that they would like to share with her about their take on that, on reconciling that difference? Okay, so Aisha.
So I can't speak to the part about other religions, because like I do feel like the Quran is the last book, but I can speak to the whole, like, after, you know, I think that we do receive messages from Allah, but I think that we receive it in places like our dreams and in our lives. And like I think like Allah's always sending us messages all the time, but not in like the formalized way of the Quran. Like I think like what Allah meant is like, this is like the last formalized text that I will be sending you. But I think like we do receive like messages like all the time. Well, at least I do. Like I can't speak for other people, but like to give an example, I had this dream. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about police brutality because this was an important part of the dream. So in January 2023, in my community in Cambridge, a young boy, young man named Faisal, he was 19, he was murdered by police. He was a Muslim Bangladeshi boy. He was only 19 and he was murdered by the police. And, this created a lot of activism in the community, and, a lot of discussions around like Islamophobia and police brutality. And I had this dream, where, I was on my way to my local masjid. I was at the crosswalk before I heard the local masjid, and I heard Allahu Akbar 4 times, which is the amount of times you hear it during a janazah. And then I was with my mother, and she said, we need to seek justice for Faisal. And then I woke up. And so for me, that felt like a very clear message from Allah, that his murder wasn't just, and that he was having a mental health episode, and the police were called, and unfortunately, they shot him. And so for me, that was a very clear message. So I just recommend pay attention to your dreams. Are in the hadith, dreams are supposed to be a sign. Pay attention to what's going on around. I see what's happening in Palestine as a very clear message from the Quran, especially when I hear Palestinians reciting the Quran verses. It's very, very powerful. So I pay attention to what's going on in the environment, in your community. So while I think the Quran is the final formalized text, I think that we're always, not necessarily revelation, because that's what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, but we're always getting messages from God. We're always getting messages from our Creator telling us what we should do, what we should not do, praying istikhara. So that's my direct response.
Wonderful. Awesome. All right. I would love to hear a few more responses just on this topic that Nurjahan has brought up before we go to branch off to other topics. So Naseem, do you have something to say about Nurjahan's question? Oops, sorry. I accidentally unmuted you. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, wait.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. I do, and I completely relate to you. I grew up, so I'm from Yemen, and I grew up with the tradition and the Islam being mixed together, and you read the Quran and you take it on face value, and it's really difficult to see in a new way. And the thing that I struggle with, kind of like what you say, is how do we know we are, it's almost like a repetition of what is said in the Bible, to an extent of this is the right book, this is the right book, this is the right book. And you're kind of okay, well, I feel this is special. I just need to see this is special. And I just need to know okay, how can I transcend this into every day? And I think the first is something like this. I always tell the story that once I separated from my family and all that, and I needed to kind of search my way back to Islam, I started, a meetup group, and it was a Quran study similar to this, and this guy Adnan was leading it, and we became friends. And then he said, "Oh yeah, women can be imams too." And I grew up with this mindset women cannot be imams, but I never questioned it, right? Because you're kind of taught, just read the Quran, don't question it, right? Just kind of take it on face value. And I was like, no, they can't. And he's like, yeah, they could. There's nowhere in the Quran that it doesn't. And I went home and I was like, oh my God, he's absolutely right. There's nothing in here that says you can't. And I think when you're raised with a religion a certain way, mixing the tradition and the spiritual part of it, it is so hard. It's almost like you have to make a conscious decision to separate the two, because that's exactly what I'm doing with Surah Al-Baqarah was very difficult for me to read, because a lot of things came up, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of different. But I have to look into discussions to make sure that I'm not reading it as with bias. So I hear you, and we're here for the ride, because I've been trying to separate the two very much.
Wonderful. Yeah, that is when I was talking about decolonizing in the orientation, and really decolonizing ourselves first, to then decolonize Islam second, to then decolonize the world. This is part of what I was referring to. In so many cases, and it's so mixed and so multi-layered for so many people that I almost feel like this is not the right word to use, but it's shorthand, right? But in so many instances, we have internalized our oppression, and when we're teaching religion to each other, or it's being passed down to us, people don't realize what they're doing and reinforcing. And so it really is, as difficult as it is to process. I think we need to pay attention to that difficulty, as or maybe pay attention to the triggers as points that need healing. So I think, the fact that you're showing up and you're engaging, the real healing process comes in turning everything to God first. So I would really encourage anyone who is going through this struggle, like, yes, to some degree, communities have passed something down to you, and it will be healing to engage with a new community. However, that's still enforcing the same dynamic of needing a community to validate your connection to God. So anyone who's struggling in this way, I really encourage you to, at the moment anything strikes your heart, immediately turn to God. But you have to turn to God in trust, and just be like, God, what is this? Like, can you show me? And you will be surprised at the way that God will show you individually, for you, for your sensitivities, for your particular trauma, your particular triggers, in a way that, maybe you would get like 70 or 80% by interacting with another, like, more healing or more inclusive community. God will answer you in a much more thorough way that will put you at peace. So I think do both, but I really encourage anyone who's having any sort of struggle, immediately in your heart, keep turning to God, keep asking God, like, God, I'm struggling with this. Can you please show me? What does this mean? And you will be surprised at what starts to be revealed to you. And then also, yes, also understand that you need to reestablish your connection with community, but just replacing one community with another, you're still keeping your distance from God. So don't be afraid to step back into that direct relationship with God. Okay, let's do, is it Fatima?
Alaikum. Sorry if it's a little noisy. I have my son in the background, but I wanted to go back to Nurjahan's other point that she brought up. I was having difficulty with.
Oh, it is a little bit noisy. Do you have headphones maybe that you can put on? That would
yeah.
Hear just you.
Is that, sorry, I am wearing headphones, so if that's not working, I can mute. It's fine.
No,
I'm sure
okay,
next time.
Just go for it. Just speak super loud.
Okay, I was having when I was reading the parts about in the Surah Baqarah again about the Jews and the lessons that we're supposed to learn from them, I was also having, like, it was uncomfortable for me to kind of read some of those parts, because it felt like that's where it felt biased, like in certain ways, and I know, like, in the footnotes it explains that this is like specifically to the historical context of the time when there were issues in Medina. But I feel like a lot of these verses then get used presently to justify anti-Semitism, or like that's how it's like used now. And so that really made me uncomfortable, and I felt like that was something that is still, like, how do we process that, and like in what context should we be raising that? And it just seemed like it was like it's written very in a such a biased way, and I don't know again if that's just the translation, or like in some ways it seems like we're being tested by being pivoted against each other. I don't know, but like those are all the different things that were kind of going through my head. Sorry, it's pretty noisy, so I'll mute, but that was kind of. that's where my head was at. That was like the most uncomfortable reading I felt like I had so far. But also, I want to just say thank you so much for this program. I've tried to start Muhammad Asad's Quran so many times in the past, and I keep like it just gets too heavy. And so having this community to like just knowing there are other people who are all doing this together has been really great. And inshallah, I'll finish it this time. But thank you. I really appreciate the community around this.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, so the note, I think, Nurjahan, that you were referencing, I had written it through the Women's Mosque account, is that sometimes we do need to take a little grain of salt when we read Muhammad Asad's translation, when he's talking about the Jewish community, because this is a community that he left, right? Imagine you're coming from a long line of rabbis, and he was expected to be a rabbi himself. And then in order to move to a different or a new religion, there are parts of his past that he needed to take a firm stance against and reject. And so sometimes he can be a little bit kind of self-reproaching of his former community. So do take that with a grain of salt. However, he also, I think, does a good job of pointing out the similarities and the continuation, and using a universal approach to say that, you know, these are lessons for all of us, and there's essentially you know, a way to be the best Christian that you can be. There's a way to be the best Jew that you can be. And these are the things that are being pointed out, like how not to be, you know, how not to misuse your text in a way that defies our shared text. So that's what I would say. I want to get some more men, please. Men, and so I called on Mateen because I also want to get some people who haven't spoken. So men and couples or families, I would love to hear from any families that are going together. All right, Mateen, go ahead.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Yeah, on the continuing on the topic, I feel like there's always this tension between, where I found there's a tension between inclusivity and exclusivity, not just in Islam, but in general. It's just like how wide is the definition of the community versus how narrow is it? And there are places in the Quran where I feel like it becomes very narrow, but I feel like this is not one of those places. Like in the beginning, like here in Baqarah, my understanding was like at this time, Islam is not a named religion yet. And so this is more of an appeal to general goodness. And you had a lesson on the term hanifa or hanif, right? And so there's like an appeal to there's one verse which is, I think, in line with some of the verses that we're talking about where it says like, you say he was, I'm blanking on it, but it's like, you're not a Christian, not a Jew. They say he's a Christian, he's a Jew, or something like that, and said, no, he's a hanif. It doesn't say he's a Muslim either. It says it's a hanif. And so there's like an appeal to some primordial goodness that is part of like the widest definition possible of what it means to be. And then even that verse that we're talking about, where it says, if you say you're a Muslim, if you say you're a like a Christian, a Jew, or a Sabian, you're going to be okay with God. And so, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, there are definitely more verses coming, Nurjahan. So I'm seeing Myra's comment in the chat that these verses that are specifically targeting the malpractice or the misunderstandings of the Bible and the Torah are more responses to the criticisms that were coming through towards the new Muslim community. So Myra, I'd love for you to make that point via audio so people can hear what you just wrote.
Hi, yeah. I didn't want to, but yeah, I'm on the side Can you hear me? I put
Yes.
headphones on. I don't know if it. Okay, good.
We can hear you.
Uh, I'm right there with you, Nurjahan, too, because as a person who, you know, I'm Latina and I haven't done any like genetics tests, but I'm sure there's some indigenous in me, and just I'm also kind of like, you know, monotheistic religions aren't, and especially Abrahamic religions aren't like the epitome of, you know, like how can we say that one group of people can be saved while others are not, if they do good deeds, and if like you know, they leave a legacy of just creating a better place for everyone around us. I would kind of read, I read the passages about being critical about Christianity and Judaism more as them doubting the legitimacy of Islam and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the sense that they also believed that their books and their customs and religion was perfected already. So it's like, how dare someone come after us and tell us that we've been doing it wrong? And I'm sure that there was, you know, as someone stated, that you know, that time in Medina was a lot of back and forth between the different people, and then also the Quraysh, the pagan people that were there, and that could have played into some statements of like, of no, we're the one and only ones, and it's been perfected, and there's nothing coming. There's not. It's, you know, everything before us was wrong, and everything after us is wrong. But yeah, I also read some of the parts critically of like, you know, some people might believe that there is one creator, some people might not, some people, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be, that their life or their legacy that comes after isn't something valuable to us as a whole, or society as a whole. And you know, as someone that also has it has converted, I'm also kind of like critical of some aspects that have been put in into some cultural practices, or like you know, having someone come up to you and say like, oh, you can't dye your hair, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like, where is it? Where
You
like,
won't find it. You won't find it. Wait to the end. Stick with us to the end. January 2025. You will have proof in your brain, and you will know. And then when they come and tell you, you'll know.
Yeah. So like, you know, becoming more knowledgeable, so that you know, I can differentiate between those type of comments, or like, where can you point to me where that's at, like that kind of thing. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's such a great point, you know, and really, like, I encourage you all to not be, we talked a little bit about this, seeing things as they truly are versus the illusion of power that we've bought into. You know, if someone's coming to you as an authority, but they're actually completely ignorant, you treating them as an authority is further enabling them in their lie to themselves and to others. So rather than that, if someone's coming to you, you know, see it as what it truly is. That person is suffering. That person is Quran illiterate. That person has no idea how amazing Islam is and what God has actually said in the Quran. That person has been lied to. That person has internalized their oppression, and now they're going around oppressing others. So don't buy into their authority or power over you, that illusion. Really see them for what it truly is, and that is they are suffering in their ignorance. And don't fight with them either. Don't argue with them either. Make dua for them in your heart. Ask God to help them and to help open them to the truth, and also to guide you as well. So don't buy into that dynamic, that power dynamic, because it's not going to help you, not going to help them. And inshallah, we the more that we empower ourselves with the truth, we can spread that, and people will come to us and try and find out, okay, what's the difference here? Why do I feel so connected with God here and not in those other spaces? And that's how we solve these issues. So it is 7. So originally, we were going to do 5:30 to 7 for our formal discussion. And then we were going to do breakout discussions from 7 to 7:30. We were going to do it over tea and dessert. We were going to cut a cake for our 9-year anniversary, and socialize in person. Unfortunately, we can't do that. And then we were going to tell the people online, hop on to Clubhouse and you guys can talk via Clubhouse. But if you guys want, we can keep going on Zoom for another half an hour, or we can end here, and then whoever wants to log on to Clubhouse still can. Why don't we take a little vote, maybe by the heart emoji? So if you would like us to keep going on here for another half an hour, you can just do a little heart emoji and then we can continue. If not, we can end now, and then we can invite, whoever wants to can continue on Clubhouse. So I'm seeing a few hearts. And if you'd like to log off, if you need to go, you're absolutely welcome to. No pressure, but officially it is 7, so I do want to conclude this portion. Okay, so I'm seeing a few hearts. So why don't we do this? So if you would like to log off at this point, you're welcome to. I want to thank everybody for showing up to this first discussion. And inshallah, next month, the first Sunday of every month, except for September. Next month, I believe, is going to be Sunday, March 3rd. We will hopefully, inshallah, have our in-person gathering and then also an online gathering. So yeah, if you'd like to leave at this point, you're welcome to. I think we'll continue maybe for another half hour on here. And then next month, what we'll do is, have the online Zoom discussion 5:30 to 7, and then from 7 to 7:30, if you're joining us online, you can hop onto Clubhouse and continue. If you're with us in person, then we'll continue to chat in person. All right. So I would love to hear from anyone who has not spoken yet. Has anyone not spoken at all yet? And if you have a new topic that you'd like to talk about, it would be great to talk about at least one other topic tonight. Is it Shanika? I'm gonna unmute you.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Sorry, I had more of a logistical question than a content question.
No problem.
I did send this privately to you in the chat, but since we weren't able to meet up in person today, if anyone is still interested in a physical Quran copy of Muhammad Asad's translation, would be able to pick that up at the next in-person meeting?
Yeah, so we picked up, only about 5 people signed up for it. So what we can do is, Care, they have a donor who has said that they will donate a free copy of his Quran to anyone who is either not Muslim or who is part of a Quran study circle. So because our program qualifies as a Quran study circle, anyone who's registered in the Qur'an Literacy Program is eligible to get a free Qur'an from CARE. However, they have certain restrictions, you know, working as a nonprofit, working with their donor. So they have to submit the names of everybody who is requesting one. So that's why we need, if you want us to pick it up for you, we need you to register through the link that we sent. And then we will go and make that visit. So because we have another month now, we can make a second visit. And we'll send that link out again. So if you didn't get it this time, we already picked up the 5 people's Qur'ans that that registered for February. Inshallah, we'll send that link out a second time and then make one more trip to the CARE office before our March event, and then we can pick up more, inshallah. All right, I saw a couple finally. Yay! I want to see. I want to see what the family experience is like, because you know I've been running the women's mosque for so long. It's been a lot of ladies, and it's yeah, it'll be nice to balance things out. I want to hear from couples, from people, families who are taking this program together. I'd love to hear how it's been for you guys to go through this as a family.
Okay.
Iqbal, and what's your name?
Oh, I'm Stephanie.
Stephanie.
This is my husband Iqbal. Assalamu alaikum. We're calling in from Honolulu right now.
Oh.
And I'm originally from Irvine though.
Oh, okay.
And
that's an upgrade. That's a huge upgrade. Irvine, where every building looks exactly the same, to glorious Honolulu. Very good job. Improvement.
So I converted when I got married, and this is about 10 years ago. And I've been following you all, Women's Mosque, since you started.
Wow.
And then I came across this program, so I was very excited to start. And I've held off on learning about the Quran until I've had a trusted source, you know, a good place to start. And so it's been a great experience so far.
Wonderful.
And we're holding each other accountable. He's my accountability partner. But we had a question to everyone, how they are working their readings into their daily life, if they had any tricks or anything that worked for them. We're always looking for different ways of getting our readings finished.
Great question. Someone said, I listened to it on audiobook. Oh, I looked for audiobooks beforehand, but I couldn't find anyone or any audiobooks that included the footnotes. Does that audiobook also include the footnotes? No, it doesn't. Okay, footnotes are important. As a reminder, our program is not just the verses. Our program is the footnotes as well. Anyone else have any tips they'd like to share? Nadia has a tip.
Okay, and now you're gonna hear rain go away. So this is I really liked what you did at the beginning with the accountability questionnaire, because you made me think of what happens if I miss the time and then miss the time again and then miss time again and then miss time again. So the way I set it up was I plan to read it after Fajr, which 1 helps me get up for Fajr, but 2 also helps me to start my day with it. I feel different on the days that I do. I feel a little more centered. And then if that doesn't happen, then my second layer was I read it when I first wake up, whenever that is later on. And if that doesn't happen, I have a 5 o'clock alarm on my phone that every day, regardless of whether I read it or not, it goes off at 5, so that I've put an alarm there. So if I've missed it, it goes off, and I get happy when I haven't missed it. 5 p.m. And I get happy when I haven't missed it, because the alarm goes off and I don't have to actually do anything because of the alarm. And then if I miss like a bigger chunk, 11:30, my kids have a class, so I'm usually just sitting there. So I put another Sunday alarm for 11:30. And so that is my time to catch up for the week. So having all those layers have helped, and having a recurrent alarm that goes off regardless of whether I have or haven't helps too.
That is an excellent idea. And hey, look who's giving us this advice. Not only teacher, principal, but CEO of 6 schools in LA. So I would listen to her and her advice. That's a great idea about the automatic alarm no matter what. And yeah, that would be a huge source of relief any day that you hit that alarm or you get that alarm and you're like, haha, I don't need you. Here's some other ideas. You could schedule it into the calendar. That's a great idea if you're a calendar type of person. Another person said, I like reading on my Kindle at a coffee shop or before I start my workday. Another person said, I try to do it before I start my workday, but I found that I really struggle if I must miss doing it first thing in the morning. Yes, that's absolutely true. That's how I've gotten behind. When I'm behind, I have to do a couple days at a time on one of the mornings. I haven't been as successful when I want to do it later in the day. I'm more likely to be successful when I just schedule to make it up the next morning. Another person said, helps to have it on my phone and do quick reads throughout the day. And yeah, these are all excellent ideas. I'm going to maybe steal some of these and put them in as suggestions for next year's class. So thank you guys. Excellent ideas. An excellent question. That's a great way to use this community is to lean on one another. So thank you for bringing up that great question. Aisha?
Oh, I had a response to your internalized oppression piece.
Sure.
So I'm autistic. And one of the things that I've noticed is that I think it's one of the things that like the Muslim community could do a much better on being inclusive of neurodiversity. So like for example, like it's really hard for me to stay still. I also have ADHD and like I've always like moved during prayer. And I think like as a kid it was more tolerated, but as I got older, like I would like rock side to side or like move my arms and things and like I felt very stigmatized around it. And part of my like neurodivergence is like accepting like that that's really hard for me to stay still. And I definitely want to see more awareness in like the community about neurodiversity, and I think a lot about like the Qur'an verse, we created you in different nations and tribes so that you may get to know one another, and like I definitely think that includes neurodiversity. Yeah, and I find that my experience has been like sometimes I feel like most one of the reasons why we're not really good on neurodiversity is internalized colonialism. I think like white supremacy often makes us, we have to adhere to a certain ideal. And yeah.
That's such a great point, and thank you for raising awareness about that. It's one thing for us to talk about it as an organization, but it's another thing to hear people's firsthand experience because it makes it real for everyone and helps everyone empathize. So thank you for opening up and sharing that with us so that we can all learn. And for sure, I actually just was listening to a really interesting video on the history of American Sign Language. And it was so interesting to hear about how, when sign language first started to spread, it actually was seen as a threat because at that time, any sort of insular community was not accepted, mostly towards immigrants, but even including the deaf community because they were perceived as like an insular group that had their own language. And so at that point in American history, they were actually forced to try and learn how to lip read and speak, which really destroyed their ability to communicate with one another. So yeah, there's a lot of layers of this. And in terms of the movement, when you were saying that, I remembered so I had 4 Quran tutors growing up, and I also went to Sunday school. My very first one, I remember I would like rock when I would read, and she would stop me because I don't want to, I don't want to say what country she was from because I don't want anyone to associate things, but she was from a country that really frowns upon certain practices certain practices where people do move and shift as sort of a religious interpretation. And so it was something that she religiously disagreed with. But for me, it was just like, it just made sense to just move, right? Just to, because it's a rhythmic text. And when I was reciting it in Arabic, I also come from a very musical family. So it was just my body's natural way of interacting. But every time I would do that, she would stop me and be like, don't shake. And so I also want to just let you know too, that it's like, there are bigger issues at play here, that unfortunately, like if you do have an issue like that or a difference like that, it can make you feel even more targeted. But I think that the issues are so much, I mean, it's just, inshallah, this program does what it's meant to do, and we can at least, educate ourselves and spread our awareness outward, and invite in the beauty that way. So anyone who has not spoken yet, I would love to hear from any new voices, any new people at all. Oh, and then we had another tip. I also do my whole weekend readings on Monday, so I schedule more time on Mondays. I have a hard time doing it with all of the kids at home on the weekend. Great. Anyone else? Anyone who hasn't spoken? I see, Muna, you're smiling. Can I take that as an can I interpret that as you raising your hand? Do you want to speak?
Not necessarily, but I
No,
really
okay, sorry.
I really invite kids' energy, and I really appreciate as well having different generations in all of these conversations. So whenever I see a small soul, I'll be just smiling at them. So.
Oh, you're Nur Jahan's accountability partner. Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah. Oh, do we have any youth who would like to speak? Are there any young folks who are part of our program, or anyone who is a little bit? Oh, yeah. Okay, we gotta.
You can say it now.
Hi.
Hi. What's your name?
Hezekiah.
Hezekiah. Do you want to say anything about the Quran?
Okay.
You say I'm good.
He's like, I'm okay. I think he was
okay.
like, oh, now I'm shy.
Oh, well, we're glad you're here, Hezekiah. If you want to speak later on, you can raise your hand again, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, he already wants to speak again. All right, let's hear you. Oh, wait, it's not. Oh, he's waving goodbye. Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Victoria said, also for the easiness, if you use the Google Docs, schedule meeting 10 to 15 minutes and add the copy from the PDF to the notes of the meeting. Oh, okay. This is just a tip on our, I think our meeting. Okay, great. Any youth or anyone? Oh, we got Zan.
Sorry, I have a question, but I don't know, I've been thinking about it for a long time, but since this is a new program, obviously, we're trying everything out, but I just have like general questions that I want to ask, but I don't know if I should, well, I don't want to ask them now, but I'm saying I have general questions that I want to ask, but I'm confused if I should put it on the Reddit or the Slack or the Clubhouse or all of them, because there's no really one way to reach everybody, because everybody, I don't know, I'm just asking, like, I don't know, I'm confused, like.
So I would say if it's a question about the program itself, put it in Slack in the focus group feedback channel. If it's a question about the Quran or like a general topic in the Quran, then you can just put it in whatever day that it comes up for you. It doesn't have to exactly correlate with that day's readings. Does that kind of cover is there any other type of question that you were referring to?
Well, I don't know. It's just like a general things that have come up for me. I don't know, that just the general questions that like have to do with Islam. I don't know. I'm just confused. So like one example is, I still want to post it somewhere. So yeah, don't be surprised if I'm going to ask it again and you see it me ask it again, but like this was like a really long time ago in like the beginning of the readings. It was recommended that there was this Karia app. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right,
Yes.
but basically, so I did download it, but I was so overwhelmed because there was so many people on there that I was like, where do I begin? So I wanted to ask the whole group, like, does anybody know any women reciters? Because I've been looking for years for women reciters because I have like a man reciter on my phone, but I would prefer to listen to a woman. So I just wanted to ask like everybody in the program, like, can you help me like start somewhere? Who's like your favorite female reciter? Like that's like a general question. Maybe it should be in Reddit on that day. Maybe I should just go back. But then it's so far in the past that I'm like, I don't know if people are reading back on day 2. You know what I mean? So like
Well,
general
that might
things.
be a question for maybe you know, maybe we'll start a new Slack channel. So maybe we could just do like a questions channel, general questions, and then you can post in there. Would
Yeah,
that
that's what I was thinking. I don't know. Yeah, because I was like, it's just a general question, but I just didn't know where to
Yeah.
put it. And then it's been so far in the past. I should have posted it on that day, but I was just,
No,
I
it's
don't know, too
totally fine.
overwhelmed or whatever. But and then other random general questions have come up too. So that was just like one example, and I just didn't know where to put it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I think that was the first day. I think so we linked the Kari app. And so yeah, a day like that, say you know, there's something in the curriculum guide that triggers a question that's not related to the Quran verses for the day, still post it that day because it's still referencing the material, the curriculum guide for that day. So that way, you know, everyone who's on that day, they'll see what triggered your question and they'll see your question as well. And so it'll be in the right place. All right, we got another family, Summer and Devin. Let's hear from you guys.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Samar El Bayati, she, her pronouns, and we live in Corona, California, in Riverside County. And this is Devin, my son.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Are you our youth?
He's 22. 22. So yeah, that counts. Yeah. College student. Yeah. So inshallah, he will be able to hang in there with us. He's on break right now, but school starts up again. So hopefully he'll be able to keep up with the readings. We'll see once school starts. So yeah.
Is mom pressuring you? Or you wanted to join on your own? Be honest.
Okay, she ambushed me when I woke up. I hadn't even had water yet. And she's like, "You want to do this?" I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Oh. Uh-oh, we can't hear you. Say that again.
Oh, it's a good thing to do. So, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, who listens to their mom? You know, of course he does. I'm a wonderful mom, right? So
oh my goodness,
about you and your intellect and your spiritual self.
I thought what Aisha said was very interesting about.
Maybe speak louder. Can you hear him?
Yes.
Can you hear him? He's speaking low.
Yes,
okay.
About movement, because in the Sufi tradition, there's a lot of movement in prayer, and I never thought that, you know, as this sort of, I guess, newer tradition has come about, it's very anti moving around, and like, you know, you have to pray like a certain way. And I just think of like, even like if you read early Islamic history and then you see like today, everything seems very different, almost polar opposite. Because if somebody was an archer, right, they would pray and then they would do kepaze, which is like a very wide movement of the archer and drawing your bow and practicing shooting your bow. And so that's within that prayer is a lot of movement. Or then you have the Sufi tradition where you are in ritual and you're playing drums and all that stuff. So
and going into trance.
Going into
you're supposed to go into a trance-like state in the Sufi tradition. Yeah.
So I just I never thought about that. Yeah, it's
Yeah, so
very
you're supposed to be
interesting.
moving. Yeah.
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 Excellent point. Yes.
And just so you all know, just to sort of qualify where we're coming from, Devin's a history major, if you hadn't figured that one out. So
Read
knows a lot of
Destiny
history.
Disrupted. Read Destiny Disrupted. You will love
Right.
it.
Yeah, and my father was Iraqi, from Iraq, and a musician, singer, and so we grew up with a lot of music, and I play Arabic drum, and I would perform with my father until he passed away, from the age of 12 until he passed away. And so and his mother, on his mother's side, my maternal grandmother, was Sufi back in Iraq, and would go into trance and everything, and he would go to rituals, and so that's kind of where he internalized the Sufi rhythms and everything, and brought them here, to this country when he was performing. And so it was very much like a spiritual experience for people, but he only referred to himself as Muslim. He didn't say he was Sufi or anything like that. It was on his mom's side, not on his father's side. But it's very interesting to hear about sort of those rituals and how they would go into trance and what that was like. And so definitely movement was a big
They did
deal.
some crazy stuff. They would like cut themselves with swords.
Yeah.
And go into these trance-like states.
Yeah.
It was very
Interesting
interesting.
things. Yeah.
A lot of
when they're in a
dance.
trance.
A lot of
Yeah.
dance. Yeah.
So anyway, so that tells you a little bit about us.
Wonderful.
So
And
now
I
you know a
want to
little bit
always
about
say
the
from
El
my
Bayati family.
I always want to say, in this situation, no pressure. So don't pressure the youth. Let them form their own connection with God. But it is nice that you guys are joining together. But Devin, I want to tell you, no pressure. So make this program your own. And I hope you stick with it even as school starts up. Bite size, 10 minutes a day. You can do it. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. All right, anybody who has been hanging back, come on forward. We want to hear from the shy people now. Come on. Usually in our discussion circle, so we always have our Jummas, and then after Jumma, the key part of our programming or difference, I would say, is our post-Jumma discussion circles with the Imam. So we sit in a circle, and it gives everyone access to religious leadership, and we're able to dialogue and also see each other, see everybody's faces in the community. But every single time when we're like the first 20 minutes, people don't raise their hands, and then the last 5 minutes, 10 hands go up. So I think the shy people need that sort of deadline to give them a little boost of confidence to finally. All right, great. Natasha Hussein, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I wouldn't call myself a shy person. I would call myself a procrastinator, which is why here I am at the end of it. Also, there is something wrong with my camera. Once again, not shy at all, but there's something wrong with the camera. But inshallah, next month when we're in person. Yeah. And also, if you hear any meowing, my cat Juma is with me. If she wants to join in the discussion, she's very passionate about the subject. But I think just kind of to wrap up and just kind of what I've heard so far, especially talking about kind of like, I think earlier, forgive me if I'm wrong, very true, Aisha, very true. Alhamdulillah.
Aisha said all cats are Muslim.
It's true, it's true. She prays with me and everything. But yeah, I think Myra was talking about, and this is something that definitely struck a chord with me as well, this idea that a lot of people, whether you're born Muslim or a revert, there's always there feels like there's a lot of no's involved when it comes to the do's and don'ts of Islam. And also when Aisha was pointing out, like, kind of this lack of inclusion or exclusion of people with different needs and different learning styles and whatnot. And I think what was really interesting for me is that I wasn't always like a practicing Muslim. I was born Muslim, but it was only recently that, alhamdulillah, I've got back into it. And what's ironic is that as I got more into Islam, the more it was easier for me to be Muslim, in the sense of you get to this point, and I think that Allah does a great job of kind of establishing this relationship with his, slaves or servants, where it's like, everything that is being told to you, I don't necessarily, and from what I've read, it doesn't necessarily feel like do this, don't do that. It really does feel like at the end of the day, Allah wants what's best for you. And there are, certain guidelines and stuff that are set in stone, but there's also other things that it really is up to your interpretation. And it's kind of nice to kind of feel like your creator has this faith in you that at the end of the day, you're going to find a way to do what's right for you. And so when it comes to hearing, don't do this, do this, purely for the sake of just looking at things at face value, I kind of would prefer if people would take a step back and be like, well, why maybe does it say not to do this? Or why would some people think that that's the case? And I think in that process, it's actually been easier for me to maybe like break some old habits that I had that maybe wasn't completely aligned with my vision of Islam. Just because at the end of the day, like I was able to understand where Allah was coming from, or if there was any hadith, like where the Prophet ﷺ was coming from, and I think that's one beautiful thing about Islam, is that there is this room for questioning, and there is this room for kind of being able to forge your own path and still be in line with what Allah wants for you. Because at the end of the day, your creator wants what's best for you. And if everything is planned, I think there is this innate trust that you're going to figure something out, or, there's also guidance along the way. So, yeah.
Great. And right as you were talking, we got National Weather Service, a flash flood warning in effect for this area until 12 a.m. PST. So just like our first launch, the rain has started pouring right as we ended. So, I mean, it's been raining, but the downpour came when we finished our first launch. And again, same thing has happened. So alhamdulillah, the mercy is flowing, blessings are flowing. Let's receive them. Let's continue. And I want to thank you all for being a part of this program. As I tell my team all the time, without all of you guys and without our amazing team, it would just be one crazy person in her room alone with all these ideas. So thank you for being a part of this program, for signing up, for showing up no matter what. For answering the invitation. And it is an invitation, it's not an obligation. So the days when it gets tough or hard, don't get down on yourself, because that's not what this is about. This is not a work obligation or assignment. I just call them assignments because it's just language, but really see it as a direct invitation to get closer to your creator. And anything you struggle with, turn to God first. That's going to help you throughout this entire program, your entire life, anything at all. There's literally nothing that you can ask, or nothing that you can't ask God for help with. So just keep turning to God in your heart, and inshallah God will lead you. And please keep the feedback coming. Again, we are using all of your feedback to further shape this program for this year. You guys are our brave first class, and we're experimenting on you. We did have beta testers, but you guys are also beta testing for us, and we just didn't tell you. But we're gonna keep shaping this program, and then inshallah next year, when you're all graduating as 100% Quran literate participants, and we have our graduation ceremony and party, and we'll actually eat cake that time. At that point, you guys will have helped us shape this program for future generations to come. So please do keep that feedback coming. And thank you again. And may Allah bless you all and keep all of us safe. And inshallah, please do hop onto Reddit. I'm keeping up the last question of the week on the 99 names of God, and you know, what's your favorite name of God? Use it in a dua. If you haven't had a chance to log on to Reddit yet or post anything, please do that, just for fun, just once a week, the question of the week. That way we can get to see all of these different perspectives. You know, we heard from so many amazing people today, but there's so many more who didn't get a chance to share. So Reddit would be the best way for us to hear from the entire community. So please do value your voice, value perspective, and share it with others. All right, take care, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.